chip, so I'll know for sure that it's actually streaming. I see that Julesy is first in the house today. Good to see you. Yep, there it goes. And yeah, so the funny thing is that the title of last week's live stream seems to be what got it demonetized for whatever reason. Gotta love Google. Just gotta love it. So Julesy, hope you are well. I'm sore, but it's a good kind of sore. If that sounds a little off, let's see. Oh yeah, it is. Alright, I know exactly what that is. Thank you for why the settings keep going back. Let's see, microphone. What is first meter? Hold on. I know what the problem is. It's that this microphone isn't picking it up. So, let me be right back. And hold on just a second. Yeah, I'm going to get black screen for a second. There's not much I can do about that. So I'm sure you don't want to watch me stumbling out of my chair. So I try to get to where the microphone is, just where I am right now. If I manage to get it connected. Alright. There we go. That should be better. Let me know. Oops. So I want to save changes, and we'll turn the camera back on. Okay, so as of right now, the audio should be better, and so that's part of the back on. Okay, so yeah, so it sounds good now. Yeah, it's a stupid thing. You know, it's one of those things that. Having a good microphone is great, and in fact, if you're thinking about doing a lot of content on YouTube, live streaming or otherwise, it's better to have a good microphone than to have a good camera. It is genuinely, you can get away with a $25 cheap webcam that can't even do high def if you spend a couple of $100 on a really good mic. I'll tell you that. But the better the microphone, the more complicated it can be as far as your audio settings. And in some case, I think that I went a little overboard with this particular mic. Now, this is a popular mic among some YouTubers. I've seen this microphone around. It's called the Shure SM7B, and it's a really good mic. It's like a $400 microphone. Law Reloaded and I both got them at the same time. And so the problem is that if you're going to use an XLR mic, which is just the type of connector it uses, that's this little connector right here is an XLR connector. So this XLR is on the microphone itself, This is the cable that is patched to what's called an audio interface that connects to the computer itself. And the audio interfaces, look, I have a pretty decent one. It's an older one, but I have a pretty decent one. It's made by Roland, but they're a little wonky. They just kind of occasionally get locked up, and you have to unplug and plug them back in, and basically to reset them. And so that's all it was. Anyway, I apologize, but your regularly scheduled live stream will now continue. And so Moxley's in the house. CD, hey, how you doing? Also commenting on the noise. Stan Lee commenting on the noise. Bradley is in the house. And then everybody's saying that the sound is better. Stan Lee says, lots of big channels only use avatars. That's true. And, you know, I'm mixed on that because I've considered that because I love the avatar that Yitz has created for me. It's great. But the funny thing, and certainly this mug ain't worth staring at or anything, but every time I've started to just use my avatar, people get mad at me. I mean, and so now I've been trying to push that a little bit with my videos. You'll notice like in the Sacrifice of Angels, I don't show my face. Because quite frankly, I don't want to show my face. I never did. When I first started this channel, I didn't show my face at all. And then people were just like, oh, we want to see your face. And it's like, and here I am. But yeah. Stanley says XLR, not USB. Well, XLR is this connection. I don't think I said, but there's a USB interface that the XLR connects to. The Roland is an XLR to USB sound interface. That's the device I was talking about. That's where the trouble is. Space Ninja says, I can only stay for a few. Just wanted to wish you well. Thank you, Space Ninja, and it's always good to see you. And Scarlet or Roland. No, I had both. The Scarlet I still have lying around here somewhere. But the Roland is a more solid piece of equipment, in my opinion. The Scarlets have a few features that the Roland doesn't, but the Scarlets are notoriously noisy and more difficult to get a decent volume level out of. And the SM7B is already a difficult microphone to get a decent volume level out of. But I've had less trouble with the volume of the microphone since switching back to the Roland, which is the one I started with. I started with the Roland, I switched to the Scarlet on the recommendation of some people, and and now I'm back to Roland. So anyway, the reason I'm sore, last night we went to church, and I have not been to church in a couple of months. CD just wants to talk about my audio setup. Yeah, I can't remember. You know that little, I can't remember what it's called, but everybody that has an SM7B has it, the little thing that, it's like a little preamp that you go from the SM7B into that, out of that into your Roland, out of your Roland into the computer. Anyway, but so we went to church last night. I haven't been to church in probably a couple of months because of the pain. Honestly, one of the frustrating things is that the chairs, and our church doesn't, I mean, the chairs in our church aren't horrible, you know. And Space Ninja says, by the way, my wife and I both love you. Show your face, we're not the Trek family is family. I appreciate it, buddy. I truly do. And thank you. And thank your wife, too. It's weird that you're not alone in that. There's a couple of married couples out there where both the husband and wife enjoy my stuff. And for the life of me, I don't know why. So I will say this. Guys, if your wife listens to my program with you, she's a keeper. You know, that's all I can say. Anyway, so we went to, and no, fortunately, Stanley, we do not have pews. And because if we did, yeah, that would be horrible. So the chairs aren't the worst normally. It's just that given my current condition, like typically the chairs don't have armrests, and you'll notice that if you watch me, you'll notice I'm always leaning to one side or the other. And that's because I lack the strength to sit up straight. And so I can lean back, but I can't just sit straight up. I need to have that support of my elbow on something in order to in order to support myself. So like I can sit like this and hold myself with both arms, but I that's not as comfortable. And the church chairs just don't have that, and I mean I wouldn't expect them to have that. That's not typical for a church. And so there's that, and then there's also the fact that just sitting in a chair that is not overly plush. I mean, I could get a cushion for the seat to deal with that, but the harder part is the simple lack of armrest, because you can't bring an armrest with you. So I haven't been going very often. Fortunately, our church streams their Sunday morning services. So what I've been doing the last few weeks is after I do this live stream, I would watch the live stream of our church. And for anybody that's curious about our church, I am going to highly, and I mean highly, recommend that you watch the live stream today. Because I already know it's coming, of course, because I was there last night. We do this twice a year at our church, and it's called a vision service. Our church doesn't have business meetings. Typically, most churches, the way they work is that they have an annual or biannual business meeting where the members of the church are invited to attend a special meeting where they usually fill up the assuming that you have a membership that actually cares about the church, you'll fill up the place, and the pastor and elders and council, or whatever you call your leadership body at your church, will then report on the finances and where everything is and all that crap, and so it's just a business meeting, right? And so to keep the people informed of where their money is going and how much the church has collected and what the budget is like and that kind of thing. Well, our church doesn't do business meetings, and we actually don't keep membership rolls at all, because our attitude is you're a member if you walk in the door. And so if you want to be a member, show up every Sunday or Saturday, whatever your preference is. But the membership isn't about taking, and we do have classes that we offer, but membership isn't about taking a course and getting a piece of paper. It's about participating. It's about being a part of the body of Christ. That's what being a member literally means. But most people think being a member means taking a class and getting a piece of paper saying that you're a member. And that way churches can keep tabs on how many members they have, and they brag about numbers. We don't take attendance. We don't have a membership roll. And in fact, one thing, and Pastor Corey says this at every one of our vision service meetings, which is what we call the equivalent of our business meetings. He has no idea who gives and who doesn't, with a couple of very important exceptions. The exceptions are the staff of the church, he knows, and the elders of the church, he knows. And that's only as an accountability thing, that he does consider it a requirement for those that are employed by the church and those that are the leadership of the church, that they give to the church. But outside of that, he has no idea who gives and how much. He just knows what the totals are, right? So so if he, because he doesn't want to, if he, and I've seen this in other churches, where if you have a particularly wealthy family that gives, say, a quarter of the church's budget from just this one family, guess what happens? That family gets whatever they want, right? So that family says, I think that we should paint, the kids' room red with green polka dots, and that's exactly what it'll be, right? Because that's what happens when, because money tends to equate to power. So if the pastor, and by the way, then this church is not part of a denomination. Corey is the leader of the church. He founded it, and it's technically belongs to him. So he absolutely he does not want to be influenced by how much money you give to the church. And he knows for a fact that if you are working for the church, you ain't getting rich. And as far as the elders of the church, well, you're already expected to give. And if you're not given, you will not hold the title of elder. And the elders are the ones who basically authorize spending, although Corey can supersede that. Now, but the funny thing is that our church has never struggled financially. Even now with COVID, a lot of churches are really struggling. And so to kind of put things in perspective, before COVID, we were taking in about $4 million per year. And it was steadily growing, which is a good thing. And last year, we set a new record. We collected almost $5 million, and which was great because we spent a couple of months where the church was closed. Even when right now, even now, our church attendance is only about 75% of what it was before COVID, and yet people have given more. And so last year, 2020, I think they actually broke 5 million. This year, they budgeted, or no, yeah, they did. I think last year they made like 5.1 million, because I'm trying to remember the numbers off the top of my head. I apologize. This year, the budget, they always budget based on the prior year, and then if the trend is going up or down. Based on the trend and all that, they budgeted this year for, if I remember correctly, 6.1 million. That's a rather ambitious budget. Like I said, during the service, Corey goes through the numbers. Like 1.9 million is what they spend on staffing and that kind of thing, and which is a relatively low percentage for a church of our size. He talks about how much they use in benevolence, and then how much we spend on supporting the other churches that we support and that kind of thing. And here's the kicker. So we had a $6 million budget. By the end of the year, we're going to have collected over $8 million. That's with reduced attendance, and that's with, with COVID still affecting people. And so, and which is amazing. It's truly amazing. Average, we read a couple of chats and I'll continue. Average M says, always been of the opinion that church membership is BS. We are one body. Exactly. And we tend to agree. Church membership is unnecessary. It's just a way for churches to be bean counters, and we're not bean counters. Alex is here from the UK. Good to see you. Alex Bogey's here in the morning. Probably wants to pick a fight, but we're not going to be talking about politics, Alex. Space Ninja says, I believe that a gift is a gift, and the giver has no say in how the gift is used. I was raised that it's rude to ask, what did you do with my gift? Just my opinion. That's fine, and I tend to agree, but when you're talking about an organization like a church, first of all, if you're a Christian, and I don't know where you stand theologically, Space Ninja, because I don't know that if we've talked about it, I can't remember, but I don't feel bad. I can't remember much these days. But if you are a Christian and you're trying to follow the biblical principles, you are obligated to give 10% of your income to further the kingdom. So basically what people refer to as a tithe. The tithe literally means a tenth. And it's the tradition is that you would give 1/10 of your wages to the church. And the church is obligated to use that money responsibly and to be transparent with it, because that church is, and this is what, when I see this, it breaks my heart, is that there are churches that demand, and I mean, the pastor will be up there demanding that everybody tithe. I don't care how much you're struggling, you need to tithe. I don't care what you're going through, you need to tithe. That's their answer to everything, you need to tithe, right? And you see, like, and I'll tell you, my mother-in-law, she lived right across the street from a small church, and this guy made me sick to my stomach, because he had parishioners that were dirt poor and were having to go to, they were on welfare, they were getting help from food banks, they were doing all this stuff. Meanwhile, the pastor of the church was rolling up in a Cadillac with a gold ring on every finger, gold chains all over him. He's absolutely a stereotype. And he really thinks and he's got his parishioners convinced that that's okay. That basically, yeah, the pastor should be living like that because he's our representative to God, so he should be living high on the hog. Doesn't matter that we're dirt poor, he should be living like a rich man. That's wrong. And I will tell you, Corey, I don't know exactly what his current salary is, but he is not ashamed to tell you. It was so funny. This was a few years ago. Every month they do something called a next class. And in the next class is basically where you can come in on, I think it's the second Monday of each month. They'll give you a tour of the building and they'll give you some pizza. Corey will tell his story about how he founded the church and how he became a Christian and all that. And then they just open it up to where people that are there can ask questions of Corey and the staff. And when we were at the next class, this was a few years ago, Corey and Josh, at the time, the only two pastors of the church or actually there were three pastors, Corey, Josh, and little Corey. They were all standing up there as well as the other staff members. And one person said, "How much do you make?" And Josh, who was the associate pastor, he just he had one of those embarrassed laughs, like, oh gosh, this is not the kind of question we were here for. And because the question was to Josh. And so Josh was like, well, I don't think that's an appropriate. And Corey just grabbed the mic from him and said, "I make $42,000, no benefits." And that's not a huge salary, right? And at the time, yeah, they just, like, within the last, I think it was just before COVID hit, they added health care to everybody's benefits, which drastically increased how much we spend on staffing at the church. But yeah, nobody's getting rich. Corey himself, Corey owns the church. He founded the church. The church collects millions of dollars. It would be so easy for him to, take advantage of that. I've been to Corey. My house is nicer than Corey's. My car is nicer than Corey's. Right? So he does not, he is not a person who's after big expensive things. And I don't have a particularly great, my house is nice, but it's not a mansion. It's not even a McMansion, it's a decent little house. The car that I drive is not brand new. It's like a 2016, I want to say. and it's in good shape, but it's not, but he's, Corey's driving around like a 2007 RAV4. That's just the kind of guy he is. He's not interested in the material stuff. And it's just wrong that when I see that's what the focus of a church is. And it's the same thing reflected in the building. If you've ever seen the building, our building is an old warehouse, and it still looks like an old warehouse. And on the inside is unfinished, and the outside looks like a warehouse. We don't spend hundreds of millions of dollars on a building. We don't spend money on extravagances, period. And so he does break it down where he spends the money. He breaks down how much money we collect. And we talk about what our plan is for the remainder of the year and into the next year. We do this twice a year. Generally speaking, like this was our second vision service this year. At the beginning of the year, like around February, March, we do a vision service where he talks about here's what we want to do this year. And then towards the late summer, early fall, which would be now, he does another vision service where he says this is where we are and where we look like we're going to be at the end of the year. And so, long story short, if you're curious about the church that I go to in any way, shape, or form, look up Experience Community Church here on YouTube. They will be streaming in approximately 2 hours and 30 minutes. And if you don't like church music, you can wait a half an hour after that, or just keep the volume down while they're doing their songs. And so the way they do it, we have very simple order of service. They start out with a song, they do the announcements, they do 3 more songs, then Corey comes up. When Corey comes up, he's going to lay it out as far as the money for the church and all that. So after church, and I will get to your chat in a minute, guys, I promise. I just wanted to talk about this for a minute. After the service, one thing that Joshua, my son, does, he is like, it's so funny. He has to talk to Corey after church. Now, our church is thousands of people, right? You generally don't get to talk to the pastor after church because, Corey literally has like bodyguards that kind of, not really, well, they kind of are, but security that escort him out to make sure there's no trouble or anything. Because, a lot of people there. But Joshua, my son, always makes a beeline for Corey, and Corey has always made an exception that Joshua can talk to him because he really loves Joshua. And so they always talk for a few minutes. And so when Joshua and Corey were talking, and me and the missus, I kind of hobbled over, and we're waiting for them to finish up. And then Corey came over and talked to me for a minute because he knew that I haven't been to church in a while, and we talked about the chair situation. And, he offered right away to get a nice, comfortable chair, but I'd have to sit in the back. And I said, you know what? I would be willing to do that, but if I'm sitting in the back, I'm not going to be focused on you and this is just me. And I said, for whatever reason, if I'm sitting behind a bunch of people, all I see are their heads. I can't see the person on stage, which Corey totally understood. He said his wife is the same way. So he's saying, well, maybe, if he could put one off to the side for me, if I would do that. And I said, sure. I said, but I don't want to, put you out or anything. And Corey was like laughing at me because it's like, he just showed how they're going to collect $2 million more than they need. He said it's not a big deal. So they're going to work on getting a chair that'll work for me in the church, which is really nice. Because, in a church of thousands of people, he doesn't have to go out of his way for me. It's not like I'm anything special. We've been working with Muhammad, who, by the way, and I'm hoping to be able to attend. Muhammad's going to start leading a series of classes on Islam, because Muhammad is a former imam. For those of you that don't know, an imam is kind of the Islamic equivalent of a pastor. And Muhammad is a former imam who left Islam, became a Christian, and is now what we refer to as the benevolence pastor of our church. He actually is the person that his job, I would love his job because it just sounds so wonderful, but his job is to give away money. And in fact, Muhammad, has paid our mortgage twice since this whole mess has happened. And we've, talking to him, I told him we're going to probably have to ask him for help again. And he said, look, we're not, we're going to take care of you. And it's like such a great guy. But, and I'm sorry if I'm getting a little teary, it's because the way this church has been, we don't deserve the help they've given us, but they've been wonderful to us. And anyway, so Muhammad's going to start leading a class. This Thursday, I'm going to go to their interest meeting. And if I'm able, depending on what's going on with the MS and the leave from work and stuff, if I'm able, I'm going to attend the class because it's basically learning about Islam and about how, as a Christian, to talk to a Muslim without basically being a jerk, right? And so I very much would like that because, I talk to people of all different stripes online, including Muslims, and I don't want to be a jerk. I mean, aside from, I get salty when we're arguing about stuff, but I don't want to be an outright jerk or offensive per se, in the sense of being ignorant of you or your beliefs or your, or something that really is inappropriate. All right. So long story short, I have an incredible church that I get to attend. I hope that you'll check it out later if you can. And even if you can, it is a live stream. It'll stay on YouTube. It's Experience Community Church. But the stream for today, they'll stream the 9 a.m. service and the 11 a.m. service. Doesn't matter which one. The information is the same. Just the audience is a little different. But if you watch one of them today, you will definitely get a good idea of what our church is all about. Because it's a vision service, and Corey lays it out. He lays out the finances. He lays out the mission. He tells you everything that we do. He talks about one of my favorite things that I used to participate in is what's called the bar ministry. And we still do this. I wish I could do it if I had the physical ability. But every Friday night, there's a downtown area of our town, which most towns have a downtown, but the downtown area is full of bars. And so we have a bar ministry. Our bar ministry doesn't go around to the bars and say, hey, let me talk to you about Jesus. No, what we do is, and we have permission from the city to do this, is we set up a grill on the corner of the freaking downtown square. We set up a grill and we start cooking hot dogs, right? And we bring out this big old ice chest. And we have a guy dress up in a giant hot dog bun. And as people start, and we set this up at about 10, 11 o'clock at night, and as people start coming out of the bars, we're like, hey, free hot dogs right here. You want a hot dog? Come on over, have a hot dog. And we just have people come over, and we give them, they can eat as many as they want. We have, Coke products generally in the cooler, and as well as bottled water, so they can get something cold to drink, and we just hang out with them. And sometimes we eat hot dogs with them, it just depends. And so all we do is hang out with them. And the goal is to, have a good conversation with these people, but we're doing it so that they sober up. And yes, you got to be willing, if the person's like, so why are you here? Well, the answer to that is because we love our community. Well, who are you? Well, we're the Experience Community Church. So you're trying to recruit? No, we're here to give you a hot dog and hang out with you. You don't want to talk about Jesus? We'll talk. Hey, did you watch the latest episode of Lower Decks? I'll talk. I tell you, it's awesome. It's a great ministry because it's not pushing Jesus in your face. It's giving you a hot dog. It's showing you the love of Jesus in a very real and tangible way. And, if just one person was able to sober up enough to where they drove home safely, that ministry was more than worth it. And anyway, and there's other ministries that our church does. It's just awesome. So I will shut up now and let's start reading the reading the chat. Yorkie says Taliban has made a statement they're prepared to send 3,000 peacekeeping troops to Washington, D.C. to help secure Western democracy. That's just wrong. Alex says, what's your opinion on Goliath, Nephilim, Colossus, or regular blooded guy who's just slightly taller than most? Did the Bible exaggerate his height? I'm trying to remember how tall the Bible records Goliath as being. I think that when we tend to think of, because people think of Goliath as a giant, we tend to think he was like 50 feet tall, but he was really, if I remember correctly, let me see, how tall, let me see if I can find a reference to it. How tall was Goliath? Okay, so the oldest manuscripts from the late 1st century give it 4 cubits in a span, which would be 6'9". Whereas the Masoretic text has 6 cubits in a span, which is 9'9". Well, that's interesting. Let's see. It's 4 cubits in a span, 18 inches, 6'9". Almost. Yeah, so it looks like the oldest manuscripts actually put Goliath at about 6'9". The 9'9" stuff is from later manuscripts, it looks like. So, there you go. 6'9". So, I know people that tall. David, on the other hand, was probably an average height guy, so probably like 5'5", 5'8". So next to a person who's 6'9", and David was young, so he might have been like, much slighter in build, so it would have been an incredible sight. So as far as, if it's 6'9", he's just a big guy. Let's see. Alex is not really because of my lifeguard duty on the weekends, not been able to attend church this summer, so appreciate this. Oh, well, very cool, Alex. Well, you're always welcome. Just don't pick a fight with me. Alex says, I need to tithe. How about I tithe instead, as in turn it to be exact? Well, tithe is a biblical principle. Tithe is not. So yes, you should tithe, because, and the idea of tithing is not because God needs your money. It's because the church needs to be supported in order to do God's work. But yeah. Previous church in rural area, the priest brought out financial statements and would try to shame the poor farmers into paying off the mortgage. Later found out the building was a gift in a will. Wow. But you see, I don't have a problem with the biblical principle of tithing. I genuinely don't. And in fact, we do it, right? As difficult of a struggle as it has been, when you guys give to me, I will be honest with you, 10% of what I get goes to the Experience Community Church. Right off the top. When Google sends me the money, if Google sends me $500, I immediately send $50 to the Experience Community Church. And that can be a difficult choice sometimes, because it's like, well, if I kept that, I could do something nice for the channel, which is kind of like a ministry. So wouldn't that be tithing? I try to rationalize it, and then I realize no, because if that's no, I am not a church, and so people do not tithe to me. Maybe I should start telling you guys to tithe. Stanley says, mine's a 2007. Well, there you go. You and Corey have something in common. I drive a 40-pound pair of workman's boots. Alex says, I used to take the bus where my mom wasn't available to drive me. You know what? In Portland, Oregon, we used to take the bus everywhere. But here in Murfreesboro, you can't get around without a car. Space Ninja says, what made you decide to change your name to Salty? I know you considered it for a while. Any reason? Sorry, off topic. That's okay. You're only about the 700th person to ask me that. I changed it, A, because a lot of people, including people who were friends of mine, like Captain Foley, we kept saying, you know what, anti in your name is not a good thing. Because people think you're against Star Trek. So being the anti-Trekker, people think you are somehow, you're like making fun of Star Trek, you're attacking Star Trek fans or something like that. So you should change it. And Salty, frankly, fits me because I do tend to get, you guys know me, I tend to get worked up sometimes. You attack me and I fight back. I get salty, right? In addition to that, I do tend to tell stories about my life growing up in the 70s and 80s and stuff. And and it's something that Life with Matthew likes to talk about. The actual term salty comes from the idea of being an old salt, which is someone who reminisces about times past, which is something I do on this channel. So there's that as well. And there's a rumor flying around, and I've yet to be able to confirm it, that people were making fun of me over on Friday Night Tights, calling me Salty Trekker. Because, everybody in the Fandom Menace has to have names for everybody because they can't use people's proper names. So if that were, I haven't found a clip that actually says that, but if I could, man, I would love it. But I kind of liked it. So if that's all it is. Lord M says, I know, what I know about Muslim culture. If you said you were going to do something, you have to do it because you're bound by your word. Well, as a Christian, you're supposed to do that as well. So, and in fact, Jesus puts it to let your yes mean yes and your no mean no. He's talking about you don't need to give an oath to what you're going to do. You simply do what you say you're going to do, period. And you should have a reputation for that. Right. And unfortunately, I know that I'm horrible about that because there have been a lot of things I've said, I'm going to do this, and I never get to it because I've run into problem after problem after problem. And part of that is that I overpromise and underdeliver, and I'm not going to do that moving forward. I'm going to try not to anyway. And because I've made too many people angry about it. I'm going to try to be realistic about what I can and cannot do. And so for right now, I'm just trying to figure out what the new normal is going to be with the MS and all that. And I don't know, am I going to end up on Social Security? We're going to have to sell the house, that kind of stuff, and which is stuff we're dealing with. And fortunately, the church is going to help us a little bit with that. And we've already been talking to Muhammad about, hey, what we're going to need, we're going to probably need help to get the house ready to sell, turn around and sell it, and then buy another house. And and I said, we're going to probably have to come begging for help. And Muhammad was like, dude, you don't need to come begging for help. We're going to help you. That's so it's difficult as a man to accept when you need help, but when you need help, you need help, and unfortunately, while you guys have been generous, my channel's not big enough to where the YouTube channel sustains us. And I can't depend on that. So, what I have to do is figure out, well, what can we make work? What can be a normal life for us that's sustainable, and that could mean, there's a few possibilities. Like the main one we're looking at is if we sell this house and we buy a house in a place like Metropolis, Illinois, because the real estate is dirt cheap there, and commute to church basically. Another possibility would be if we sold the house here and we got a condo or something, although the missus really doesn't want to go back to apartment living, and I don't blame her for that. So she would rather live in Metropolis than the condo. I'm not going to fight her on that. Besides that, Metropolis has other benefits that would help me. So it's not easy to go through this, but we're going to go through it. Not like we have any choice. Space Ninja's lolling, not sure why. Alex says, the city. The city. Well, if you can't tell, yes, the Tick is something that I care quite a bit. I love the Tick. The original animated Tick, not the crap that came out on Amazon recently. Ugh. Weren't humans generally a lot shorter back then, too, by comparison, Giant? I don't know. You know, some people argue the yes. Some people say not really. I mean, like a couple of inches. I wouldn't say a lot shorter. I don't think people were like, 3 and 4 feet tall. How tall was Goliath? Goliath was taller than David. Yeah, that much we know for sure, Moxley. Alex says, awkward question. Is modern day humanity the result of Adam and Eve's family driving into an ever shrinking incest pool? That is an actually interesting question. And so we'll talk about that for just a second. There's a couple of reigning schools of thought, right? Excuse me. You have your hardcore biblical literalists who believe that, and I'm not going to say this is the actual absolute answer. I'm just telling you, I have leanings, but I'm not committed to one of these answers. And the reason I'm not committed to it is because, quite frankly, it makes no difference to my daily life today, which, if any of these possibilities is true. So the biblical literalist answer is that basically, you're right. The Adam and Eve were, in fact, the only two human beings created by God. And therefore, every single human since then is the result of an incestuous relationship. All right? So that is possible, which means that so Cain murdered Abel, and then Cain ran off to Nod with his sister to have a family. While Seth had kids with his sister, and it just continued on and on ad infinitum. So that's the literalist position on it. Then there's the idea that, well, Adam and Eve weren't the only two humans. That there were actually tribes of humans outside of Eden, and that when Cain left Eden for Nod, that there was already an existing city there. And he took a wife and had a family and all that. But that we are all the direct descendants of Adam and Eve, in that everybody outside, because Seth's line was the only line that truly survived the Noahic flood, that's a whole other discussion. But the Noahic flood had a bigger gene pool than just two people, because there were actually three brothers, each having a wife that were from different, so the genetic pool was a little more diverse at that point. And so, but you would still have, like, after the flood, cousins, but at least that's as close as it got at that point. So that's possibility number 2. Is that there's that. Then possibility number 3 is basically the allegorical idea, which is that Adam and Eve weren't two actual people as much as just an idea of trying to explain these heavy concepts in a way that people could understand. So those are the 3 main concepts. I tend to lean towards the second one. That's just my own personal leanings, based on, as far as reading the Bible, looking at the anthropological evidence, and also just kind of common sense. That's what seems to make sense. But honestly, not something worth fighting over. If somebody believes that Adam and Eve were the only two people, fine. I'm not going to fight you on that. It's a minor issue to me. It's really not significant at all. Lord M, and by the way, don't forget to put at Salty Trekker if you want me to read it because I'm so far behind. Lord M says, I read somewhere that the Apostle Paul and Peter didn't like I assume each other. Why was Peter act like a total douchebag towards Paul when they both met each other? Well, it was a difference in philosophy as far as was the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ, was that message meant for Jews or was it meant for everybody? That was kind of the core disagreement between Peter and Paul. Paul was the great evangelist. Paul was without Paul, modern Christianity would not exist. And so Peter was more like, yeah, we need to focus on the Jews. Paul was like, we need to go all over the place. And, Paul was into the missions thing. And so that was a big part of it. And so, and the thing that I think is interesting is that some of that is chronicled in the Bible. Jason, hey, good to see you, is in the house, says, I missed your open lines on Friday, but I listened to it on the weekend. When's the next open lines? I really wish I could have had the Canadian perspective in there. I don't know, Jason. I haven't done an open lines in a while because it can be very dangerous. I had a couple of people try to get into the open lines and do something nefarious. I don't know what they were going to do had they gotten on, but I have a feeling they were going to try to put something on my channel that would have gotten me taken down. I don't do open lines often because of that risk. So I would just say stay tuned and hope, I will. And what I'll probably end up doing is have, just similarly, I've done it once before where I would say, okay, so I see somebody in the backstage, please identify yourself in the YouTube chat so that I can see who I'm talking to. So if I see Jason in the backstage area, I say, identify yourself in the YouTube chat, and I see Jason Price, you put a thing in, it's just me, and I'll be like, okay, I'll let him on. Because when people show up in there and I don't know who the heck they are, bad things can happen, and I've seen channels taken down where like people would start an open lines thing and then someone would come on and then start putting porn on the screen or something, and just to get the channel taken down. And which is horrible that people do that kind of thing, but people do that kind of thing because people are jerks. Professor Brainy Specs, Jeff, how you doing, my friend? I hope you're well. And I've been praying for you, buddy. And hope that your day is going as good as it possibly can. Lancer says some preacher is teaching that the mark of Cain, aka his ancestors, are all white people. Have you read anything in the Bible that would confirm this? No, and in fact, the stupid thing, okay. Joseph Smith, for those of you that don't know that name, the founder of the Mormon Church, he used to think that the mark of Cain, and in fact, by the way, this was Mormon doctrine until like the late 70s. Black people could not go to heaven in Mormon doctrine. It was, they were horrible, but somehow there's black Mormons. Anyway, but the Joseph Smith believed that the mark of Cain was actually dark skin. He also believed that Native Americans, there were two sects of Native Americans, those that followed God and those that didn't, and the ones that followed God were all white, and the ones that didn't were dark, and the ones that didn't wiped out the ones that did, which is why Native American, the darker skinned variety of Native Americans survived, and so they're all evil. I mean, that's just, Joseph Smith was a straight up racist. All right, and I'm sorry if I have any Mormons in the house, but facts are facts. And don't get me wrong, love you, man, but your church has some really weird ideas. But as far as the mark of Cain, people get obsessed with it. Because they think that the mark of Cain is something that, is still around today. All the mark of Cain is, if you read the plain text, is a warning, don't F with this person, because if you do, God is going to F with you. And So I think that the mark of Cain would be pretty obvious. What exactly it is, I don't know. It doesn't say. It just says that God marked him. It might look like some kind of birthmark, but I don't think that it's dark skin or light skin. I don't think it's an ethnicity, because I think that that's just stupid. And besides, if that were the case, look, the descendants of Cain, and this is why it really bugs me, because so in order to talk about the mark of Cain, that means that you don't have to be a total biblical literalist, but you have to at the very least accept that Adam, Eve, Cain, Abel, Seth, that those were real people, right? And so you're probably accepting that Genesis is, at least for the most part, literal history. And if that's the case, if you're going to accept Genesis as historical, then that means that Cain's entire family line was wiped out at the Noahic flood. So it doesn't matter what the mark of Cain was. They're all dead. There are no Canaanites left. I don't know what they were actually called, but I know there were Canaanites of the ancient world, but I don't know if that's what, is that where the term Canaanites came from? I don't think so, but I'm not a biblical history expert, but there are no descendants of Cain left alive today. None. They are all dead. Alex says, if Adam and Eve were the first two people and dwelt in Eden, where did the extra humans come from? Did God have a side project going on? That's why I was talking about where I tend to lean towards explanation 2. But, there are different ideas. Jason says, yeah, I chuckled when they tried to get on the stream. I was listening to it. So, yeah. It's like, yeah, you heard what their name was. It was like, really, and the funny thing, they had a camera on. There were two people sitting on a couch, and I'd never seen them before. And they were sitting on the couch, in the backstage, and I'm like, who the heck is that? And as soon as I said, I don't know who that is, they start flipping off the camera. I'm like, okay, well, I'm definitely not letting you on. And then they got all mad. Don't flip off the camera. Let's see. Aberjam answering the Cain thing says there's not an indication given exactly what the mark of Cain was, but I believe the Hebrew word used means scar. Well, it's the same word can mean scar, marking, or tattoo, depending on the context of the word. So it could be simply a scar. It could be, it's like it could look like Harry Potter's lightning bolt. We don't know. It doesn't matter, honestly. It ultimately doesn't matter. It was enough that anybody that would see it would know that Cain was marked by God. Alex says, the Peter versus Paul dispute went towards Paul because the Gentiles became the majority while recruiting failed in Israel, especially after the revolt. Well, first of all, no, I don't think Peter versus Paul dispute went toward Paul. I think both Peter and Paul won. Paul did, in fact, go out and recruit the Gentiles. That was his calling. Peter's job was to run the church, which he did do. And the church didn't just die out. The church continued to grow. Just because the majority of Christians today aren't Jewish doesn't mean that the church doesn't have its Jewish roots. I bet if drained your blood, it's green and salty like a pickle. I doubt that, Alex, but when I'm dead, you can check. Johnny Shredder says some believe that Adam was one family line, the same line as David and Joseph, Jesus' human father. Well, that's because in the genealogy of Jesus, it goes from Adam to David to Joseph. Also, interestingly enough, it goes from Adam to David to Mary, because both Joseph and Mary were descendant of David. which is not all that uncommon. I mean, to have a common ancestor a few generations back like that. So, yeah. Eastleyan says Mark of Cain is stupid. I wouldn't say it's stupid. It actually, it's just a thing. I think that people make it into something more than it is, though. That's the problem. People that get obsessed with it today, it's just like people that get worked up about the Nephilim, right? And it's like, look, you know what? Nowhere in the Bible does it say that angels had sex with humans and created hybrids. Nowhere does it say that. People believe that. People absolutely believe that. Nowhere does it say that. You know, it also doesn't mention Bigfoot. It doesn't. Look, Nephilim is simply a term that is used for the ancient ones of great renown, right? These great men. Now, great men, some people, of course, take to mean superhuman, that these things were like these, they were almost like the Greco-Roman gods. And so people have created this whole mythology around the Nephilim off of one sentence in the Bible that simply says the Nephilim were around at that time. And there's no other context to the word. And the word is not, it's funny because it's a word that we don't have a crystal clear definition of. We only know that it refers to great men of old. And so people, people say, oh, well, it says that the sons of man and the daughters of God or something like that were getting it on and God was displeased. And so people took that to mean, or sons of God and daughters of man. Sons of God and daughters of man. And so people were taking that to mean that angels were the sons of God and humans were the daughters of men. And so angels were coming down and getting busy with human women and creating the Nephilim. Well, first of all, it doesn't say that. It says that sons of God and daughters of men were getting it on. That's one thought. Another thought is, at this time, the Nephilim were around. Right? Those are the two thoughts. People connect the dots and say, oh, so the sons of God and daughters of men having sex produced the Nephilim. Doesn't say that. But and if it did, okay, maybe you'd have something, but at the same time, you're still reading way deeper into the text. People obsess over this stuff like it's relevant when it's not really relevant. Some people think that the sons of God, daughters of men simply mean the line of Seth and the line of Cain were intermixing. And the line of Seth was trying to keep true to God's plan, and the lines of Cain were a bunch of jerks, But we don't know. Not enough info. And is it that important, people? I guess it makes for some good stuff. Let's see. I guess I have a package out for delivery. Okay. Oh, yeah, I forgot I ordered that thing for my daughter. I was like, what? I never heard about Native Americans, so I was aware of all the dead white Native... but I never heard that about Native Americans, but I was aware of all the dead white Native tribes. They influenced some remaining tribes to follow Gaelic traditions, paganism. Lancer, so you're saying you agree with Joseph Smith that there were white Native tribes in America? Or are you saying something else? Alex says, Dear Sausage Jagger, which Narnia book would you like to experience for reals, dog? Well, I wouldn't necessarily want to experience, I don't know. I've only read, I've actually never read the books. I've seen the movies. They're all right. I think the movies could have been better. They could, but I don't know. Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I'll go for the low-hanging fruit. Let's see. Agnes doesn't have green blood. He's way too emotional to be a Vulcan. But you know what? It's funny you should say that, Aberjam. Funny you should say that. Let me, I'm going to actually do something here I was not planning on doing. But just for you, Aberjam, I am going to do this. There is something that I thought was absolutely hilarious. I just started re-watching Star Trek Voyager. And so I've only watched the first episode so far, Caretaker. But I'm doing this because I want to figure out once and for all, what can an Intrepid class starship do, right? What is everything an Intrepid class starship is capable of doing? And that's, I think, a fairly simple, straightforward question, right? So let's see, we'll extreme workspace, and we'll go to, where is clean feed on monitor 2? There we go. All right, so let me add source, screen capture, monitor capture. All right. So let's see if we can make this work here. Good. All right. So here we have, this is cool. All right. This actually works. Awesome. Look at that. Woo! All right. So this is a clip from Caretaker that I'm working on. And so the next shot you're about to see here right after the shuttle flies by is a dinner party that takes place on board Voyager just as they're getting ready to leave Deep Space Nine, right? So let's take a quick look here. Dum-da-dum-da-dum. Oh, yeah, so everybody's having their dinner, and Tom Paris is ordering his crap from the replicator. Not particularly exciting, of course. And now the interesting thing about this scene, look right next to, so you'll notice that sitting on the table right in front of Paris from the camera angle here, and right behind Ensign Kim, is a Vulcan. She is, from what we could tell, she's the nurse in sickbay. She's dead, of course, after the Caretaker incident, because, why not? However, so why am I mentioning all this? Because this is actually the second time in this scene we see her. This is her sitting down and eating her food, looking like a typical Vulcan. What you're missing is that if we back it up here to before Mr. Paris orders his stuff. Oh, look, there she is having a good old time, laughing it up with her friends. Wow, Vulcans just having a good old emotional time. Huh. Go figure. So suck on that, Aberjam. Lord M says, I hear about the mark of Cain. I hear Adam wasn't Cain's father. The devil was Cain's father. Oh, come on. That's silly. Let's see where. Alex says, my senile uncle used to say angel semen is richer and shinier than gourmet honey. Well, that's weird. Yeah, that's just weird. Lance says, had to disagree about Genesis 6 where the original Greek translated to English ruins what the text is saying. Well, here's a problem with what you're saying right there, Lancer. Genesis wasn't written in Greek. I'm sure that's not what you meant. But, whatever. Johnny says, do you believe someone could lose salvation? I do. It's in fact, if you don't believe that, then you should reread the Bible. In fact, there's even a term for it, apostasy. Did Mary have other children with Joseph? Yes. That's documented in the Bible. Jesus had a brother, James. I mean, and who was one of... Oh, jeez. I don't know why people want to say, oh, yeah, Jesus was not an only child. Lancer says, yeah, I agree. There were white tribes besides natives already being hybrids of white and Asian. DNA testing of grave sites now show they were here. So some remaining tribes wrote about them. Well, I haven't heard about these great DNA tests, but hey, you know what? Then somebody needs to break the news because, right now the scientific community has been laughing at Joseph Smith. I just know it's not possible for white tribes. I just know it's not possible for white tribes to be Christians. Archaeologists have shown they brought Gaelic paganism with them and influenced other native mythologies with it. Well, I'm not. I think you might be talking about something that's much later in history, Lancer. If you're talking about things like the Nordic people that came to the eastern United States prior to the settling of the colonies and stuff, sure. But what I'm talking about, and what Joseph Smith specifically was talking about, was that ancient people, this was 2,000 years ago, that when that Jesus actually came to the United States and visited up with the tribes of natives, but the darker skinned tribes wiped out the lighter skinned tribes. And so I don't think that we're quite in the same time frame there, if that makes any kind of sense. And so now I'm still waiting. Let's see. Let's see. Now you see, Aberjam, and look, Aberjam, I love you, buddy. But when you say things like this, I want to slap you a little bit. In their natural state, angels do not have genitalia. However, they can take on human form, which would allow them to reproduce. Tell me, where in the Bible does it say that? Or is this just you putting what that kind of mythology? And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying, I don't mean to say it. And that's not meaning to be a derogatory term. Mythology just means collection of beliefs around a certain subject. There's a ton of mythology around angels that is completely not biblical. And sitting there telling people, well, angels don't actually have genitalia, or some people believe angels are hermaphrodites, and they get that off of where Jesus said that that people won't be married, but they'll in heaven, but they'll be like the angels. Well, the only way we could possibly not be married in heaven would be to not have genitals, I guess. That's a heck of a leap. I'm just saying. I think that. I don't buy into that. As far as, and I try not to speculate when we say, well, what are angels like? And when they're in their natural form, when they're not pretending to be humans. I don't know. I'm not one of them. I am not, but I'm not going to sit there and tell somebody answers that I couldn't possibly have, and I advise you not to either. And you can do whatever you want, but I'm just saying, I don't give information you can't possibly have. And you don't know any more than I do whether or not angels in their natural state have some form of angelic genitalia. We don't know. And let's see. Aberjam says, I'm no apostate, but I love you. I never said you were an apostate. I'm just saying I think you're overstepping there. How could I lose salvation? Well, you can renounce God, turn your back on God. You know, you can, start living a lifestyle of sin without repentance. So yeah, that as far as and now some people when they argue like once saved always saved, which I know Abraham is a big proponent of, but when people start arguing about once saved always saved versus the fragility of salvation. Now, do I think that your salvation is on a razor's edge? Like, oh no, if I watch that movie and a boob flashes up on the screen, am I going to suddenly lose my salvation? No. It's not as simple as, oh gosh, golly, I sinned, I'm going to hell. That's not what it's about. Because believe me, if you've lost your salvation, you probably don't care. Because you probably don't believe that you were ever saved in the first place, because you probably think salvation is a bunch of bunk at that point. Most people that become apostates are people that go from being a Christian to an atheist. They basically just reject the whole concept. They say, you know what, and which is unfortunate that in many cases it's because of some hypocrisy they've seen in the church. The church is either teaching things that are obviously not true, but self-serving of the church, right? And when I say obviously not true, I mean like directly conflicting stuff that's in the Bible in order to be self-serving to the church. And I've seen churches do that, and that's part of the reason that I became an atheist for many years, is that I saw this hypocrisy in the church, and I was like, okay, the whole thing is just a big old lie to make money. And and I'll tell you that even when I came back to the church, while the initial church we went to, I really, really enjoyed for a long time, and I felt that the pastor there was inspired and just a great, great, great guy who truly cared, and was also believed in nepotism to the extreme, and misused some church funds and did some bad things. And while I still think he's one of the greatest speakers I've ever heard, and I credit him for me being the Christian that I am today, there's some things that he's done that I gotta say, if I had the opportunity to talk to him about it without him getting mad at me, I would love to. But the problem is that he's the kind of guy you don't want to get mad at. I don't mean like he'd punch you in the face or anything, but just that, he's not someone you want to get into an argument with. But and then we went to another church because we moved, we didn't like walk out of that church or something, but we moved to another area. We went to another church where the pastor of the church was making a ridiculous salary with benefits and everything, and the church was going bankrupt just to bankroll the pastor's brother, who was the music pastor, who was being grossly overpaid, and then it turns out like the youth pastor, who was only working 20 hours a week, also grossly over. This guy was working 20 hours a week, and he was making $40,000 a year plus bennies, and this was back in like the late 90s. Okay, this is serious money. He was making $40,000 a year plus bennies, and the only reason he was there is because his parents. I was talking about this earlier. His parents were among the biggest donators to the church. He wasn't qualified to be a youth pastor. He was disastrous. And he was teaching the kids the worst kind of crap, but, he was there because money. And when the church was when it got to a point where the church was 6 months behind on their mortgage, and the church council finally had an emergency meeting and said, no, we've got to do something about this. Everybody's salary gets cut in half. Everybody, right? And so the youth pastor went from 40 to 20, right? $20,000 for 20 hours a week work. And by the way, his work was not work. I've seen what this guy did. As a volunteer, I did more at that church than he did. All he did was change the reader board sign with clever little messages that he would look up. And he did that once a week. Well, more like once a month. And he would hang out with the youth. And I mean literally just hang out with them. He didn't teach them anything. That was his job. 40 grand. So even making 20 grand, in my opinion, is grossly overpaid. Most youth pastors are unpaid, especially at church that size. But making 20 grand, that was still an insult. And his parents nearly, they walked out. They were like, "Oh, how dare you!" And then the senior pastor, his salary was cut from $80,000 to $40,000, but he was still getting full benefits, and his house paid for, and his car paid for, and his phone paid for by the church. And he said, well, if I'm only going to get part-time wages, then I'm only going to work part-time. And so he started turning off his phone when he left the office, and he'd leave the office early all the time. I was like, what the heck is wrong with these people? They only care about money, right? I tell you, I was this close to walking out in the church again, but then this time I realized, no, it's not about the hypocrisy of man, right? And unfortunately, though, the church has got a lot of that. Anyway. I meant the Hebrew in regards to natives. I was talking about Gaelic, not Norse. They're white people way before Nordics showed up in America. Well, I don't know about that. I don't know any details of that, but I'm not a historical expert on that. All I know is that as far as the Mormon tradition, there doesn't seem to be any solid archaeological evidence to support what Joseph Smith said. Now, that being said, maybe, something will come up eventually, but for the most part, I think the Mormons are just kind of off. Johnny says, no disrespect, the Bible doesn't mention evolution, but you believe it. The Bible but you believe it. The God says the earth is God. The Bible says God created the earth in 6 days. What's your point, Johnny? And you say no disrespect, but what's your point? Are you trying to say you're stupid because you're a Christian? Or are you trying to, what is the point of what you're saying? Because first of all, don't tell me what I believe. Okay, that's not appropriate. But, because I don't believe, first of all, as far as evolution is concerned, I don't believe in evolution. I believe in God. I don't believe in evolution. I think evolution is the best explanation our scientific community currently has for the diversity of life on this planet. Period. But I don't believe in evolution. I'm not an evolutionary biologist, and so I don't claim to have an expert opinion on it. However, I do believe that the world is a little older than 6,000 years, significantly so. So what? We all definitely should be prayerful about everyone around New Orleans right now. They're looking to get sporty again. I haven't heard about that. Don't know much about. I haven't heard much about New Orleans lately, but then I haven't watched the news this week. So, aren't cherubs described as some kind of horrifying, multi-winged, multi-headed, lion-burned hybrid creatures with awesome kick-ass lightning powers? No. There are creatures described something like that, but they are not called cherubs. Maybe the Vulcan nurse on Voyager is actually a Romulan spy. That could be. Aberjam says, you said that to believe you can. You said that to believe you cannot lose your salvation is apostasy. No, I did not say that. I said you can lose your salvation. It's called apostasy. Apostasy is losing your salvation. Anyway, Jordan says, morning, looks like I got a fun day ahead. I mean, my garage and basement flooded and tons of branches down. It sucks, Jordan. And so, no, Average M, I did not call you an apostate. I don't know you well enough to call you an apostate. I would never accuse someone of being an apostate because I don't know what's in your heart. Only you know what's in your heart. And Professor Marine Spec says prayers for safety of those in Louisiana. Oh, so I'm assuming that so the New Orleans area get hit with a hurricane or something. Oh, man, I have been out of it. Average M says Hebrews 13:2. Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for so by doing so, some of you have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it. This shows angels can take on human form. I didn't say that angels couldn't take on human form. I said you don't know if angels have genitalia when they're in their natural form. You don't know. Joseph Smith was wrong because we Cherokee people are the most horniest people on planet Earth. Okay. I don't know if that would be an argument against Joseph Smith, but that's an interesting argument. Alex says, what are your stance on Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Latter-day Saints? Well, first of all, Mormons and Latter-day Saints are the same thing. Just so you know. Latter-day Saints is just another way of saying the Mormon Church. But they're fringe groups that claim to be Christian, that basically have some very odd beliefs. I would highly recommend Pastor Mike Winger's series on those churches to look at, as far as the details of what they believe versus contemporary Christianity. It's very difficult they're not Christian. As much as I would like them to be, they're not. They have some very odd beliefs that are very antithetical to Christianity. For example, the Mormons, if you look at a lot of Joseph Smith's work, the Mormons are polytheists to the extreme. They believe that there are millions, if not billions, of gods because you yourself can be a god. All you got to do is be a good enough Mormon, and you will become a god eventually yourself, and populate your own universe with your own people. And in fact, what we refer to as God the Father is simply a very good Mormon. And Jesus, became a god some 2,000 years ago. It's Mormons. Once you dig deep into it, it's messed up. Jehovah's Witnesses, they're straight up cult. And I'm sorry, JWs, man. Look, some of you guys are great people, and I'm not talking about the people in these churches, because I know there are great people in both the Latter-day Saints Church and the JW Church, but the church itself is a cult, and they separate themselves from the rest of society. They have their own translation of the Bible, which purposely, and by the way, the Mormons do this too. But in fact, the Mormons look up their. Oh gosh, I wish I remember the scripture number. But there's actually a verse in Genesis that Joseph Smith added to the Bible just so that the Bible would prophesy that Joseph Smith would come. I mean, it's messed up. But Jehovah's Witnesses, they have their own translation of the Bible that purposely mistranslates certain things to try and support their doctrine. They believe that Jesus and Satan are in fact brothers. They believe that Jesus and the Archangel Michael are the same person. They have some really, really out there things. And so, and the fact that they try to, by the way, a Jehovah's Witness is not allowed to participate in media that's not printed by the Jehovah's Witnesses. Which is a very cult behavior. One thing that as a cult that you do is you control the information that your cult members can ingest. And so that way they don't, get outside of the cult. And so that's why they have their own translation of the Bible, the Watchtower magazine, they can, and their own books they can read, but they can't read media created by external sources. That's a big no-no. And Alex, best quote of the day. It's really quite incredible, said John MacArthur. We've been poring over the scholarly resource created by Christians over the past 500 years, and when these two Facebook debaters had all the answers. Yes, indeed. Genesis 2:24. Therefore shall man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and shall be one flesh. This is marriage. Angels do not marry. That does not, you know what? You are still, you know what? Dude, you are reading way too deep into it. Just because angels don't marry. You know what? Paul didn't get married. Does that mean he doesn't have a dick? Sorry to be gross about it, but, and in fact, Paul says, he writes, and I'm sorry I don't have the chapter and verse for you, but I'm, can't really multitask here. But Paul said it is better to be celibate, like me. So, does that mean that, you don't have, but Paul had no penis? Because by your standards, that's what that means. Jay says, I had a Mormon coworker that tried to recruit me and did a massive amount of study into Mormonism, very deceptive and manipulative stuff. Mormonism is, yeah. Louisiana's about to get slammed by a Cat 4. Ouch. Ouch. Thank you for that. Yeah, then definitely thoughts and prayers to the people of Louisiana. That is no joke. So the funny thing about the Mormons, people say, well, they're very pro-family, which they are, and that's awesome. But you can be pro-family all day long, but if your church is teaching people that are heretical, and the people, end up condemned for it, which I hope that's not the case. I hope that every Mormon, every true believing Mormon, I hope that they get into heaven. But, I think it's going to depend on, because I do believe that you're judged based on what information you had available. And so I do think that that is a factor. I don't believe you are judged based on what you don't know. And I think that's biblical. But, and so I pray and hope that Mormons that are true believers, are true, I hope that they get exposed to the truth and that they can start to embrace the truth. Because the Book of Mormon and the writings and teachings of Joseph Smith are, the more you get into it, the worse it gets. How can you claim to not be an expert on evolution when it's obvious you're a surviving caveman? You were the very first immortal. Took your first head when mammoths still roamed. Well, Alex, I try to keep that under wraps. That's all. Jay says there's a hurricane of epic proportioning, and yeah, that's what a professor was just saying. I do hope that they come out of it okay, that the storm turns at the last second or whatever. But for those if they do get hit hard, obviously I hope for the best for those that are there. Lance says, now the Vulcan nurse is just a human that identifies as Vulcans. The crew just gave up trying to tell her otherwise. Pretending she does mind melts can be fun. Okay. Generally considered pacifists, but never encourage anything weird or concerning regarding them. Jason, that kind of seemed out of left field. Generally considered pacifists, but never encountered anything weird. Are you talking about the Mormons? Because they're not like, I don't think that they're violent or anything, but yeah. Let's see. Trustin says, great stream today. Reminds me of the people who are looking for the Ark of the Covenant and the Holy Grail. They're kind of missing the point of the Bible. Yeah, they really are. It's not about treasure hunts. It's not about, look, the word Nephilim is not a particularly important word, right? The genitalia of angels, not an important subject. And we get worked up over this stuff that is ultimately completely meaningless. Does it matter if the world was created in 6 days? No. Doesn't matter. It does not matter one lick. Because you know what? That was either 6,000 years ago or 4 billion years ago, or whatever timetable you want to throw on it. It doesn't matter because guess what? It ain't 6,000 years ago right now. Johnny Shredder says the JW believed Jesus was crucified on a pain stick, not on a cross. Well, as far as and I do know that they're not the only ones that believe that Jesus there was more of a stake than a cross. But honestly, that I would consider a minor. I mean, if that was the big difference between your church and mine, was that you said, oh, well, it wasn't really a cross as much as a stake, I wouldn't care. But, but they have, much deeper issues than that. Because the idea that, it's one thing to think that Jesus was crucified on a stick, not a cross. It's another to think that Jesus and Satan were equals. And Alex says, so Christ and Satan are from the hood. Yes, indeed. Michael Jackson was a Jehovah's Witness, but he was kicked out for the Thriller video. Yes, and Prince was actually a Jehovah's Witness as well, but I don't think he was ever kicked out, which is kind of funny. Jason says Jehovah's Witnesses aren't allowed to vote, serve, say oaths, etc. No birthday parties, Christmas, anything. Yeah, they are very, very strict about that kind of stuff. And there are Christians that believe that some of that stuff as well. And most of that stuff I think is silly. First of all, birthday parties, that is more of a modern thing. Like, 2,000 years ago, we didn't celebrate people's birthday. And so if a family doesn't celebrate birthdays, you might think it's a little odd in our modern culture, but hey, whatever. If you're saying I won't do it for religious reasons, I'd like to ask, where in the Bible does it forbid celebrating the anniversary of something? I don't see that, but maybe it's there and I'm just not processing it properly. And so if you can show it to me, I'm perfectly willing to be corrected. So there's that. So the birthday thing is just kind of weird. Christmas, the main thing with Christmas, and and I'll tell you, like my father-in-law doesn't celebrate Christmas, and I know other Christians that don't celebrate Christmas, and it's usually because they'll say, oh, it's a pagan thing, right? Because Christmas is a pagan holiday, and it's like, okay, so you think that by celebrating a day, and they'll say, well, Jesus wasn't born on December 25th. And it's like, yeah, it doesn't say that in the Bible. You're right. In fact, Jesus was probably born closer to springtime. Like March or April. But so what? And yes, it's true that some of the Christmas traditions are pagan ideas co-opted by the church in order to be used as recruitment tools for pagans. That's all absolutely true. Does that make Christmas evil? No. I mean, and I would point to the writings of Paul and talking about food sacrificed to idols. So granted, there are people that are too weak to be able to handle it. And so once they're exposed to the fact that the Christmas tree was a pagan thing, that if they see a Christmas tree, then they suddenly freak out and they're going to become a pagan. So, okay, so that person shouldn't have a Christmas tree, because if you put a Christmas tree in your house, you're suddenly going to start worshiping pagan gods or something. I don't know. But whatever. Don't do Christmas. That's fine. However, if a church denomination starts saying Christmas is evil, there's a problem. Because Christmas is simply, yes, it's a secular holiday for the most part. In fact, it's a secular holiday in the United States, recognized by the federal government, to celebrate and you could, by the way, this is the official United States thing. The Christmas is a secular holiday to celebrate the philosophy of Jesus Christ. Okay. Well, if you want to say, well, Christmas is evil and I don't celebrate it because the church says it's wrong, well, then you probably shouldn't celebrate Thanksgiving or 4th of July or any other secular holiday. whatever. So as far as voting, serving, and saying oaths, yeah, there's some messed up ideas there. First of all, and I know I have good friends, like people that are on the channel, people I respect, that fall into some of this category. I disagree with them strongly. Like, for example, I know that there's a good friend of mine who's a Christian. He's a total pacifist. And he says, so he does not believe Christians should serve in the military. Now, as a person who served in the military, I obviously would disagree with this. And I do believe that if you look at the Bible, guess what? There are plenty of examples of, people who were called to serve in the military and, sometimes commit war. There were wars that were fought in the name of God that were true righteous wars. So I don't think serving in the military is antithetical to being a Christian. And so to suggest that as a Christian, I'm going to benefit from all those soldiers putting their lives on the line, but it is wrong for me to serve, I have an issue with that. I do. As for voting, it makes no sense to me when people say, well, we're not allowed to vote. Okay, so you don't want your opinions to be relevant. Okay. I don't want my voice heard. Okay. Because, and I get it, because they say, oh, God's will be done. So I'm not going to touch that poll. I'm not going to vote. So you, and here's my problem with that. And so I know I'm going to go on a little tangent here, but this is a big problem that I have with, and Jason, this is a deeper problem than just voting. But this is a problem with Christianity at the core of Christianity. Is what they do is they say, oh no, bad things are happening. Lord, please help them while I sit back and enjoy my riches. Thank you, Lord, for blessing me with all the wonderful things that you've given me. I truly appreciate it. And please help those people over there that are struggling. Give them someone to take care of them, Lord. And thanks again for all the wonderful riches that you've given me. And don't forget to help them. And now I'm going to sit back and play video games and go to bed. Amen. That's what we do. And I'm sorry, but prayer should be a call to action. Right? If, and like, I know that when I say thoughts and prayers for the people of Louisiana, okay, that's the beginning of what we should do. If I lived in Louisiana, I would, if I were physically able, I'd want to try, are my neighbors okay? Are there any elderly neighbors that need to be checked on? That kind of thing, right? Prayer needs to not just be all that we ever do. And what makes me sick is that we say, oh, Lord, please make sure the right person is elected into office. Well, it's time to vote. Oh, well, I can't vote because I'm a Christian. Oh, Lord, it's so horrible that we don't have a good Christian president. Oh, no, I can't vote. I'm a Christian. Oh, Lord, it's so horrible that our senators and Congress people are just not good Christians. Oh, no, I can't vote. I'm a Christian. What is wrong with you? You're an idiot. I'm sorry. You are an absolute idiot if you say, I can't vote because I'm a Christian. Show me in the Bible where it says, don't you dare vote. By the way, you know what it does say? Pay your taxes, render unto Caesar what is Caesar. You are supposed to participate. You're not supposed to, and it's something where and I'm sure other churches have coined this phrase as well. We talk about insulating ourselves from the world as opposed to isolating ourselves from the world. Christians that say, I don't vote, I don't serve, I don't say oaths, I don't celebrate birthday parties, I won't celebrate Christmas, I won't do anything. They're isolating themselves from the world. Guess what? You're taking that great light that Jesus was talking, you are the light of the world, and you're hiding that light. You're burying that light. You don't want you got to protect that light. You're supposed to shine for the world, and you can't shine from the world if you're hiding in a closet. All right, enough salt. Lord M says, do you think the Amish is a cult? Not really, because the Amish, I mean, they're kind of weird, and I don't know a lot about the Amish, so I don't know, as far as I don't know enough about their beliefs to really say fairly if I think that their beliefs are in line with Christianity or not. However, it's hard to call them a cult for the simple reason that they actually send their youths out to experience the world on their own before they commit themselves to being Amish. I can't remember the name of it's like something, I can't remember the name of what that time period in their life is, but it's actually a ritual for them to where they say, okay, now you got to go spend time out in the world to experience the world to make sure that this is the life for you. And that's kind of the opposite of what the Jehovah's Witnesses do. So, let's see. And let's see. You probably can't say his name, but the hard bastard did a good job comparing Jehovah's Witness culture and propaganda with culture and media now. Our culture is more cultish. Well, first of all, obviously I could say his name, but the as far as, and why didn't that thing play? I know that there it is. Okay, thank you, Alex.
Controls the universe.
In USSR, the commies successfully co-opted the Xmas tree to be the New Year tree and Santa Father Frost and to give presents on New Year. Saturnalia was likely similarly co-opted by early Christians.
Well, oh, thank you. The missus is watching. It's Rumspringa. Thank you. So the Amish thing, but I don't know enough about the Amish theological beliefs to make a fair judgment. But so anyway, as far as hard bastard, and like I said, look, bastard is just a word. I'm not a big, it's a weird name for a user, but whatever. As far as the JWs, look, they're not Christian. If you got to have your own special super secret version of the Bible, there's a problem. What was it like to practice sword fighting while wearing a saber-toothed tiger pelt? Actually, saber-toothed tiger pelts are ridiculously comfortable. And thank you, by the way, Alex. I do appreciate the $10. And, because I know I'm getting so distracted here. As far as, let me bring that back up so that I can, come on, what's wrong with your stupid computer? Kurogan Tech. There we go. As far as the communists using Christmas trees to be a New Year's tree and all that and doing, well, just because, keep in mind that in Soviet Russia, it was an atheist state. And so they don't want any of that associated with Christmas. So you just move it to New Year's, right? Why do you think Doctor Who moved from Christmas special to a New Year's special, right? It's subtle, but it's just the spirit of anti-Christianity in the world, right? Ooh, we don't want, it's like we used to have Christmas vacation from schools. Now we have winter break, right? And so because we don't want to say, even though Christmas is a secular national holiday, it's not Christmas is not in the Bible anywhere. There's a description of what happened on the morning or the evening or whatever, the night of Jesus' birth. There's a description of what happened, but Christmas is not a part of the Bible. Jay says, Mormons are not told to accept Jesus as their savior. They're actually taught that Joseph Smith is who lets them in. Well, they actually have their 5 points of a witness, which is weird. It's kind of, yeah. And Lord M, I can't, well, as far as what celibate people do, as far as that's concerned, that's not the point. Indy says, hello, Salty Trekker and Saltines. How you doing, Indy? Alex says, there can be only one. Jason says, also, they don't just have the Book of Mormon. They also teach from the Pearl of Great Price. That's true. The Pearl of Great Price, if I remember correctly, Pearl of Great Price is considered scriptural. Doctrine and Covenants is not considered scriptural, but they do teach from it. What do you think of Touched by an Angel? Theologically speaking, kind of shaky, but a good show overall. I mean, if you like that kind of thing, I watched it a bit. I think that it's a fun fantasy about an angel on a mission, but the whole thing about angels earning their wings and crap like that—that's obviously nothing theologically sound about that. Bible also, says the world created in 7 days, but here comes Genesis, so you can do it in 7 minutes. Well, 6 minutes. Yes, but yeah. But actually, what the line was with Dr. McCoy, and this was one of the first times that Star Trek rubbed me the wrong way, was that line when McCoy said, according to myth, the world was created in 6 days, but watch out, here comes Genesis, we'll do it for you in 6 minutes. I didn't like their use of the word myth there, but hey, whatever. The answer says, they used Ecclesiastes 7:1 as to why you can't celebrate birthdays. Well, let me look that up because I don't know it off the top of my head. So Ecclesiastes 7, we'll go to, okay. So it's Ecclesiastes 7:1. A good name is better than fine perfume, and the day of death better than the day of birth. Which makes no effing sense to why that would make you say, oh, birthday parties, can't do that. Okay, so what there's, I can understand, like, for example, when I go, when my time is over and I'm off this planet, I don't want a funeral where people are crying and bawling and all. And not that it's not likely very many people are going to cry and bawl at my funeral anyway. But I would rather have people celebrate the fact that, hey, first of all, pain's over. I'm going to the fun place. I'm in a party now, right? That's I think as far as day of death being better than day of birth is because day of death is a transition to paradise, right? So it's a good thing. Now, just because that doesn't, but we don't celebrate the anniversary of the day of death because we miss that person. For us that are left behind, if someone like someone that dies, even, someone we know they were a good Christian, we know that they're on the way to the right place and we can be happy for that, but we still miss them. So we're not going to be, woohoo, they're gone, right? So, but for me, the day that I die is better than the day I was born. But as far as a good name better than fine perfume, well, yeah, but you know what? On my birthday, give me some fine perfume. But a good name is better, sure. But on my birthday, you can give me the fine perfume. But yeah, that makes no sense, Lancer. Ecclesiastes 7:1 does not say anything about birthdays. It simply says that your day of death is better than your day of birth. So what? Which denominations keep pushing to ban Harry Potter? Some of you fellow parishioners love to rant about it. Alex, first of all, I'm not an expert on every denomination. There are a lot of them out there, so I don't know. It's more conservative evangelical churches tend to, overreact to stuff like that. They think that somehow watching a movie about Harry Potter is going to make you a sorcerer. So newsflash, watching Harry Potter movies, there are 8 Harry Potter movies. So watching one Harry Potter movie a month doesn't make you a wizard any more than showing up for church one time a month makes you a Christian. And by the way, your average Christian shows up one time a month. Dear Salty Trekker, how would you capture Santa and Krampus? Well, that's easy. Santa is so easy. You simply, so my wife, you guys know, my wife is an incredible baker, right? She can throw down in the kitchen. She knows how to bake. So I'm going to have her spend some serious time in the kitchen making these really good cookies. And then how like with cookies, you can put like M&Ms in them to sprinkle. Well, I'm going to replace the M&Ms with Trazodone. Okay. So I'm going to put out milk and cookies, but with Trazodone, and Santa will eat that and pass out. Right. So that's Santa. Right. Then with Krampus, well, all we got to do is put a note saying, hey, Krampus, we got Santa. And when Krampus shows up, we just leave a trap for him. So there you go. Lord, that's weird. Lord Ebb says, but if Jesus could come back during Christmas time, I think it would be the first. He would be the first to drink the eggnog. Oh, absolutely. You know, people think that Jesus was like, you know, had a stick up his butt and didn't like. Man, Jesus threw down at the party. He made the good wine, right? So yeah, I think Jesus knew how to have a good time. What branch of the military was it in? Army. Jason says, I think at one point or another, the satanic panic of the 80s and 90s had most denominations wanting to ban something or another. Well, I think that people, you see, the problem is I think people don't, and this comes down to ignorance, which there's a lot of in Christianity. Well, there's a lot of in the world in general, but like not even understanding what satanic even means. And so people think satanic means that, you know, you're worshiping the devil and, you know, you're a witch or a wizard or whatever. And honestly, satanic, man, satanic thinking has taken over this country. Satanic thought is in charge in the United States. But people don't even know it because they don't know what satanic even means. They think it's like, well, I don't see anybody worshiping the devil. What are you talking about? You know, sure, you have the Church of Satan in Salem, but that's kind of a joke. And, you know, what are you talking about? And satanic is basically worship of self. And boy, are we all about that. Jason says, for sure on the hypocrisy, be the change you want to see, not just pray. If you can't be there and give money, basically. Absolutely. And do, you know, and here's the thing, like, if you, first of all, prayer should be like, hey, okay, Lord, what should I do? Not, Lord, please have somebody do something, right? But, you know, so if I see something that I can do, I should do it. If I can't do it, then I should raise awareness of it or get somebody that can do it over there. I should do what I can to make a difference. Now, my current state, you know, I can barely walk. I can barely do much of anything. I don't have any extra money. But you know what I can do? I can get online and talk to you guys. That's something. And maybe if somebody out there, if it makes a difference and somebody does something good in their lives because of something they heard from me, awesome. Then I feel good. And from some of the reports that I've gotten from some of you, I've made a difference in one or two of your lives. And that fact means more to me than any amount of subscribers and super chats I could possibly have. When someone asks something of me, I rarely say no for the simple reason. Well, I do think that we should, you know, we're called to help people whenever we can. Alex says, checked on, I don't know, old people tend to reek of burnt peppermint. Well, then get used to burnt peppermint. You know, man, I'm so far behind today. Alex, there's your super chat. Thank you again, my friend. I do appreciate it. Every little bit helps, and it's all going to pay the doctors right now. So, the Bible's quite clear on the fact that we live in the world, and to just not be of the world as we live in it. You're right, Jason, but unfortunately, way too many Christians are trying to isolate themselves from everything around. And that's the problem I have with the Amish. Where I find fault with their philosophy is not their simple lifestyle and not the idea that they don't particularly care for electricity or whatever. It's the fact that they separate themselves from the rest of society. That should never be the Christian way. Because if you isolate yourselves, then guess what? Are the Amish people, I mean, and I'm sure the Amish people are wonderful people, right? But are they actually helping the kingdom at all? I mean, they have a reputation for making fine furniture, but are they really, you know, are they out there spreading the word? Are they, you know, because Jesus told people that we had to go out there and spread the word. Are they doing that? Or are they just saying, I got my barn, I got my buggy, I'm good? you know, I got a problem with that. Alex says, New Year is still the bigger holiday. Well, in Russia, that may be so. I don't know. What's your favorite cinematic recreation of David versus Goliath? Honestly, gosh, I wish I could remember the name. Kings, I think it was. It was a television show where and it had, oh gosh, what is his name? The guy that he's been in the John Wick movies. He was Blackbeard in Pirates of the Caribbean. Anyway, I can't remember his name, but anyway, the actor, he was Saul, and then the series was about Saul and David. And it was basically about Saul and David, but it was told as if it happened now. Like, instead of, being 2,000 years ago, or, more like 3,000 years, I don't know exactly when David lived, but, in the ancient times, instead of that, they had electricity and modern conveniences and all that. So in the first episode, in the pilot episode of the series, was the Battle of David versus Goliath. But instead of Goliath just being a big old dude, Goliath was a tank. It was literally the Goliath class tank. It was like this new tank that the enemy had come up with. And David went out and fought the tank. So I thought that was kind of a cool rendition of it. But honestly, other than if I was going to pick something else, it would probably be Dave and the Giant Pickle from VeggieTales. Funny fact about Soviets and the hammer sickle flag symbol: the guy that made it actually used one of the symbols of Patron, Russian false god of war, fire, thunder, justice. Okay. And Spike says, technically, it is a myth. Oh, I know technically. Look, mythology and myth and stuff, the words are generally used incorrectly in the modern vernacular. But, because when we say myth, we tend to think, oh, so if you say it's myth, it means it's false. No. Myth doesn't necessarily mean untrue, but myth can be, it's basically a very old story. Mythology is basically a set of beliefs around a central theme. So if you're talking about biblical mythology, you're not necessarily saying stuff that is untrue. You're just saying a set of beliefs around the Bible, right? However, the way that it was used in Star Trek II, I think they were trying to say that we're in a post-Christian world kind of thing, even though, McCoy of all people, that was kind of out of character. I could see if anybody was going to use that term, it would be Spock. Right? Like, I could see Spock with his hyper-analytical mind and always using things in the most precise terms possible, saying, according to myth, the world was created in 6 days. But McCoy, no. McCoy is the kind, he's the old kind, McCoy, I would see, of any of the members of the original series cast, he was probably the most likely that you would find in church on Sunday. What is the scariest nightmare you've ever experienced? I don't know. I that's a tough one. So I can't really think of one off the top of my head. I tend not to dwell on nightmares, generally speaking. Jason says, I think the longer cut of Wrath of Khan has him say Bible or Genesis. I don't remember him ever saying anything other than myth, but I'd have to go back. No, I think what you're probably thinking of is that Spock says, and Jason, thank you so much, throws in 10 Canadian or
Some
10
Shatners for your day, fine sir. Time for church IRL. Have a blessed day.
Thank you so much, Jason. And Alex throws a couple more bucks in.
I think by the time of Trek 2, society was Waka.
So, oh man, we'll get to that in a minute. But Jason, thank you. You have a good one. And Alex, So the line that I think that you were thinking of is that Spock, just before they go to his quarters, says, it would help me if I understood what Genesis was beyond the biblical reference. That was the line. That's the only time they mentioned the Bible in that movie. Johnny Shredder says, which branch of the military? Well, I already answered that. You don't need to put stuff in twice. Just sometimes I'm behind in the chat. If you put at Salty Trekker, I will get to it eventually. The first time Star Trek rubbed you the wrong way, creepy Kirk and Miri, the horrible, and the Children Shall Lead, body swapping Janice Lester and Turnabout and Shooter. It was probably in the Children Shall Lead, I think, was really when I started to realize there's bad Trek. I think that was it. And the Children Shall Lead is one of those, oh, maybe I'll skip Trek today. Average says, I thought you were in the first Hobbiton Grenadiers. No, I'm not a Hobbit. That's a myth. Johnny said, do you believe in the rapture? Actually, no. Alex says, and by the way, you won't find the rapture in the Bible, but that's a whole other story. I really need to watch you throw down with Krampus now. Weapon of choice. If I'm fighting Krampus, weapon of choice, gun. Do you think Christianity will be around in 200 years? Do I think Christianity will be around in 200 years? Yes, but in a severely diminished capacity. I think that Christianity in 200 years, like, for example, in the United States, I think 200 years from now, Christianity will probably be on the same level as, say, the Amish specifically are now. Like, I think they'll be known to exist, but you won't see them everywhere. Alex says, about to rock and roll, the Christians do have a point that pop culture has gotten worse and does promote materialism, hedonism, worship of the golden calf. It absolutely does. Modern society has become all about the worship of self. Follow your dreams, follow your heart, follow whatever you want to do. Get what's yours, get what's coming. Look out for number one. It's all about you. Johnny says, sorry, I thought I missed when you told us what branch you were in. No, that's all right, Johnny. So I was in the Army, and I'm finally caught up. Do you believe that the Antichrist is alive today? Do I believe the Antichrist is alive today? No, I don't have any evidence that the Antichrist. I don't believe he's not either. I'm kind of agnostic on it. I don't have any evidence that the Antichrist is alive today, as far as the, So I don't necessarily believe that. However, I do have a tendency to believe that Christianity will be wiped out before all the events of Revelation take place. Stanley says, was it the Mormons who were building the great giant spaceship in the Expanse? Yes, it was. Which I thought was interesting, although, underdeveloped, to be honest, is that they had the Mormon church in a little bit of the first season, but they kind of just dropped it. And it's unfortunate. And this is a big failing of our science fiction genre as a whole, and this is nothing new, because religion in sci-fi writing, there's been speculation as far as religion in sci-fi writing all over the place. Like, how interesting would it be if we run into an alien society and they have very similar beliefs than us, or if they have radically different but spiritual beliefs than us? How do we deal with that? How do we reconcile that, right? What if humanity becomes totally atheistic and then we run into an advanced society that is totally theistic? Wow, what a mind job. But we don't deal with any of that in sci-fi, and instead we skirt around religion. Why? I have no idea. We seem to be afraid to talk about religion. And I think that, and Star Trek is no exception. Star Trek's takes on religion have ranged from just kind of casually saying, yeah, we believe that stuff, to, Captain Picard's rant about the evils of religion. And it's been just kind of all over the place and no consistency. But no real exploration of it, just kind of either, yeah, we were good with it, or yeah, it's horrible. There's nothing in between. Nowadays, the TNG episode Who Watches the Watchers kind of rubs me the wrong way. Oh, that one rubbed me the wrong way from day one, but then that was later on for me and Trek. When you going to have Midnight's Edge and Low Reloaded on at the same time? I don't know. I hadn't really thought about that. I don't know if Midnight's Edge and Low Reloaded really want to be on at the same time. Alex says, speaking of all the Revelation stuff, is no longer prediction of the future, but history. To any reference to ancient Rome, like beasts having 7 homes, 7 hills of Rome. That is one common belief, Alex. I know that some people, and this is the problem, when it comes to Revelation, there are, and I caution you about this, because the way you said that, you sounded very absolutely certain, like how you felt, kind of like what Aberjam was saying about angels and their genitalia earlier. Don't say with absolute certainty something that people much smarter than you or I are still debating about. And when I say that, let me tell you, there are people with PhDs in theology that spend their entire careers doing nothing but studying the book of Revelation that disagree over whether or not the revelation takes place in the past, the present, or the future. There are people that spend their whole lives studying this stuff that disagree. So do not say with absolute certainty that this is what it is, unless God himself told you, you don't know. However, yes, one of the beliefs is that it's talking about Rome. But that's not 100%, and it's also not what everybody believes. Let's see. Professor Brainspace says, the Hurricane Ida is strong Cat 4 on the cusp of being a Cat 5. Projected landfall this afternoon near Grand Isle. Ouch. When was the last time we had a Cat 5 hit? And I hope that those people are evacuated or boarded up. And Alex, dude, really, what? Enough with the camel stuff. Johnny says, did you ever get into BattleTech? No, sir. I've heard of BattleTech, but never gotten into it. Don't know much about it other than it exists. I mean, just being brutally honest about it. Let's see, like Aberjam now, this is another, is giving another opinion on Revelation. That parts of Revelation have, often occur throughout history, but we have not yet had a time where every part of Revelation is fulfilled at once. And that is true. And the problem with Revelation is people are constantly, and I mean constantly, hey, is that person the Antichrist? Hey, is that the beast? Hey, is that, I mean, man, I can't even, I got so sick of, okay, George Bush was the Antichrist, and then Barack Obama was the Antichrist, and then Donald Trump was the Antichrist. Look, stop saying the next president of the United States is the Antichrist, okay? When a person is shot in the head, apparently fatally, and then miraculously recovers, okay, we'll talk. But until a president of the United States or some other world leader, until something like that happens, I ain't going to worry about it. Now, there was that one senator that got shot in the head, and she recovered, but it wasn't like a miraculous recovery. And Aberjam says, there are no PhDs allowed at the Shire Academy. You were shortchanged, sir. Get it shortchanged. Alex says, is there any way Star Trek V could have been done? I really wanted to meet the real God. Well, they could have, but the problem is that I think that first of all, I think that good science fiction asks questions. I don't think good science fiction gives answers. Because the problem is that, okay, if you say God is out there and we're going to go find God, well, then the story should be about the search, not about finding God, and turns out God is actually an evil alien in the center of the galaxy. Because as soon as you end the search with whatever you find, now you're drawing conclusions. Right. And that's not what it should do. When it comes to things like that, I think that was a mistake. And let's see. Alex says, Dear Salty Jacker, isn't the thief in the night stuff about the rapture? Actually, the thief in the night stuff is about the return of Christ. And that you should be ready for Christ's return, because he could return right now. Right? And so that's that's the thief in the night thing, is that bam. You think that when, and I think the point of it is that when Jesus comes back, it ain't going to be a question mark. Hey, did Jesus come? No, it's going to be pretty obvious. Professor Brady says, the last Cat 5 to make landfall in the United States was Michael. Good name. In Florida. Okay. I vaguely remember that one, 2018. Man. It's been that long since 2018? It doesn't seem like it. Yeah, because it's Biden. Oh, shut up, Steve. Oh, man. Let's see. Professor Bracek says, Dorian hit the I'm not going to even try to pronounce that, islands in Grand Bahama Island as a Cat 5 in 2019. Okay. And Katrina was a 5 in the Gulf of Mexico, but a week into a 3 would have made. Yeah, Katrina did a lot of damage. But sometimes it's not even about the cat. Because there's different things. Like the category of the hurricane is significant, but how it hits, exactly where it hits, stuff like that can make a huge impact as well. But definitely thoughts and prayers to the people of Louisiana right now. Hopefully they have battened down the hatches and are ready for it. So, yeah, and Lord, I know you tried to ask about a certain... first of all, please don't use the name of the leader of the German political movement in the 1940s in the chat, and not just for me, but for in anybody's chat, because that name can get YouTube channels in trouble. However, if you were asking if that, and the question was, is that person Antichrist, the leader of the Germans? He was certainly. There's two different forms of the use. There's two different uses of the term Antichrist. There is the proper name Antichrist, which refers to a specific leader. And then there is, that's mentioned in the book of Revelation. And then there's also the spirit of Antichrist, which is mentioned throughout the New Testament, but also in Revelation. So if you're asking if that particular person was Antichrist, not proper name Antichrist, but obviously he was, as would any would-be conqueror. But was that person the Antichrist? I kind of doubt it, considering, here we are, 70 odd years later. So, and the world, actually, it's been a long time. But it's like the so I don't think he was the Antichrist. Do angels get boob jobs? Wouldn't know, but I kind of doubt it. What's your opinion of rapture scare films? Well, most of them are kind of silly. I haven't seen one yet that had me convinced. Well, there was one I saw. I'm trying to remember what it was. Oh gosh. It kind of snuck up on me, but I can't remember what it was called now. And it was pretty good, but I have no idea what it was called. And then there was like the interest, and like I think the most interesting one was probably Knowing with Nicolas Cage. And that was definitely a unique one. But it was, definitely a weird one. And 75, yeah, it's 75 years now. It's like, it doesn't seem like it's, because maybe because when I was in high, when I was in school, it was like, oh yeah, 50 years since, or let's see, when I was in school, I remember we talked about, let's see, I graduated high school, and it 25. So it'd been just about 40 years. Wow. All right, so I find it highly ironic that Google banned the name for Schmittler and his group when Google is run by far-left liberals who vocally encourage direct comparisons between this people and conservatives. Yeah, I know, it's kind of weird. Google and the way their algorithm. I mean, look at the name of this live stream. Last week, I got my live stream demonetized for calling it Church Life. So from now on, it's you-know-what life. Because I can't say church life. Because I'll get demonetized by Google. Because God forbid I should have a frank and honest talk about religion. And the funny thing is, it's not like, you guys know me. And if Google wants to watch any of my videos, they can see. I'm not a hate monger. Look, I will be frank and honest about any topic when it comes to religion, especially on the Sunday morning live streams. And I'm not going to shirk away from issues that can be tough to discuss sometimes. But I'm certainly not a hateful guy. And in fact, I'm sure Alex can vouch for the fact that even when I strongly disagree with someone, I do not tolerate, straight up anger and name calling to even people that I disagree with. Because on Friday night, Alex said some stuff that I strongly disagreed with, and another person on the panel started calling Alex a name that I will not repeat right now, and I shut that down. So, and not because I was agreeing with Alex, but because we can disagree without being dicks. Did you get demonetized this week? No, this week I did not. So I can call it you-know-what life. So that's what I'm going to call it from now on. When you graduated high school, a man was being trampled underfoot by woolly rhinoceros stampedes. Jerk. I never noticed the video title. That's funny, Average Jeff. Just never bothered to look. I see how you are. Jerk. Yeah, so from now on, the Sunday morning live stream will be called the You-Know-What Life. Because, oh, Lord, I can't say church. That's a dirty word. Being a Star Trek fan, you could just call it Kirk Life. After all, Kirk means church. Well, I would consider something like that, Aberjam, but I think people that take religion seriously, which I don't have a problem with people taking religion seriously, might find it somewhat sacrilegious to substitute for church something from pop culture like that. However, you know what? That's not bad. Right? Hard to argue with that one. And Alex says, yes, I can vouch for that. I appreciate that. Alex says, the cries done by the commies are worse than by certain German regime, much worse than by a certain German regime. It was no different from Genghis Khan when the early Red were like a cult. And then retracted. Good, because I couldn't quite figure out what you were saying. Google's all about the doublespeak and wrong thing. 1984, baby. Oh, yeah, we are definitely in 1984. CD says Sodium Life. Well, Sodium Life sounds like it would be like a ranty kind of thing. So I might do that for just like random live streams. That might not be bad. And Alex says, your fossilized baby teeth are prized museum specimens. Because, just talking about how we can disagree without being dicks. But then, what do you guys do? You want to be dicks. I get it. All right, speaking of which, so here's the plan. I'm going to wrap it up here in just a moment, and then try to get a little bit of work done If I have some energy, I will do a stream later. What I'm going to try to do is get Steam installed on this computer. Maybe test out the gaming capabilities of this computer now that Matthew's fixed it, and see what it can do. So I might do that later on. And in the meantime, thank you guys for hanging out. I think it was a fun discussion. Got a little salty here and there, but then that's the way it's supposed to be. I would argue the dictator we cannot speak about, it was like Genghis Khan, a brutal warlord. The commies were like a satanic cult. Oh, the commies were definitely, the funny thing about it, as far as the communist idea, is that, on paper, communism sounds great. The problem is that communism only works if you have unlimited resources. That's really the issue. And that's why communism can, like if we had replicators, communism could work. But yeah. Anyway, so I will try to do something later as far as gaming or something. In the meantime, guys, stay salty. I guess that's a thing. I need to make I know Bird of Prey does it. I need to make an outro video. So you say, his little, but wait, there's more. And as soon as he says, but wait, there's more, it's like the live stream's over. Why are you saying, but wait, there's more? And then he throws a plug in for the website. So, but wait, there's